November 8, 1942. The Kaiser Shipyard in Richmond, California. A crane lowers the first section of a steel keel onto the blocks. This is the beginning of a new 10,500-ton cargo ship. For a vessel of this size, the established process is a matter of months, a careful craft of skilled hands. But the goal for this particular ship, the SS Robert E. Peary, is something else entirely. The plan is to have it fully assembled and floating in the water in less than 5 days. To every traditional shipbuilder in the world, it's a timeline that isn't just ambitious, it sounds impossible. And yet, it was not. The SS Robert E. Peary was launched a mere 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes after its keel was laid, shattering every shipbuilding record. But this is not the story of a manufacturing miracle. It's an investigation into what that number truly represented. Was this the new standard for American industry at war, or was it a carefully staged piece of industrial theater designed to mask a far more complex and desperate reality? To understand that desperation, you have to look beyond the shipyard and out into the cold, gray expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. By 1942, the core conflict for the Allies was not a battle of armies, but a war of logistics. It was a brutal equation written in steel and salt water, the tonnage war. German U-boats were waging a campaign of pure mathematics. Their goal was simple: sink cargo ships faster than the combined industrial might of Britain and the United States could replace them, and they were succeeding. During the first half of 1942, in what U-boat crews called the Second Happy Time, over 600 Allied ships were sent to the bottom of the Atlantic. It was a catastrophic rate of loss. Against this onslaught stood a tradition of shipbuilding that was centuries old. Building a large vessel was a craft. It took teams of highly skilled workers over 200 days to carefully rivet a hull together, one steel plate at a time. It was a proud, meticulous, and dangerously slow process. This was an artisan's pace, set against an industrial-scale slaughter at sea. The math was unforgiving. Without a constant bridge of ships, Britain would be starved into submission. The American military would be an army with no way to cross the ocean. The entire Allied strategy was balanced on a supply line that was hemorrhaging vessels. The old way had failed. The war was being lost, not in combat, but in the cold, hard numbers of a shipping ledger. The solution did not come from a naval architect or a seasoned shipwright, but from an industrialist with no experience in building ships at all, Henry J. Kaiser. A construction magnate famous for building the Hoover Dam, Kaiser saw a ship not as a unique craft, but as a product to be mass-produced. His proposal, presented to Washington, was radical. Instead of building a hull from the keel up in one place, the ship would be broken down into massive prefabricated modules. These huge components would be built simultaneously all over the shipyard, then lifted into place by giant cranes. There, teams of welders, not riveters, would join them together. Welding was faster, stronger, and required a different, more easily trained skill set. It was the logic of the factory assembly line applied to the sea. To the shipbuilding establishment, it was heresy, but it was a high-stakes bet that an outsider's industrial logic could outthink centuries of maritime tradition. Kaiser's vision required more than just cranes and welding torches. It required a new kind of army, and so his shipyards on the West Coast became magnets, pulling in hundreds of thousands of Americans who had never held a rivet gun or read a blueprint. Farmers from the Dust Bowl, clerks from city offices, high school graduates, and, in a revolutionary shift, tens of thousands of women. They became the iconic Wendy the Welders, trading aprons for leather and learning a new, fiery trade. The complex art of shipbuilding was systematically deconstructed into hundreds of simple, repeatable tasks. You didn't need to know how to build a ship. You just needed to know how to weld one specific seam over and over again. And the system worked. The numbers were staggering. A process that took over 230 days in 1941 was cut to an average of 70 days by the summer of 1942, then 50. By the end of the year, some yards were launching a Liberty ship in less than a month. It was no longer a craft. It was a conveyor belt that fed directly into the ocean. The scale was inhuman. One ship launched every day, then 2, then 3. A relentless tide of gray steel designed to overwhelm the enemy through sheer mass. In Germany, the commander of the U-boat fleet, Admiral Karl Donitz, watched this development with professional disdain. His staff dismissed the Liberty ships as crude, ugly vessels. They were slow, underarmed, and with their single propeller, highly vulnerable. U-boat crews nicknamed them torpedo magnets. Donitz was a master of a different kind of math, the kill ratio. He was confident his elite wolf packs could maintain their pace, sinking ships faster than this new American assembly line could ever hope to build them. But there was a hidden cost to this speed, a ghost in the new machine. In the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, a terrifying phenomenon began. Ships, brand new ships, were cracking. Some developed catastrophic fractures that raced across their decks. Others, caught in the trough of a wave, simply broke in half, their bows and sterns pointing to the sky before plunging into the icy depths. The cause was a combination of factors: rushed welding by inexperienced workers and, crucially, the use of steel that became brittle in extreme cold. It was a fundamental crisis of faith in the very technology that was supposed to win the war. The Allies now faced a threat not just from German torpedoes, but from their own ships. By 1943, however, the cold arithmetic of the Atlantic began to shift. On the chart tables in Dönitz's headquarters, the lines on the graph were crossing. The number of U-boats being sunk was rising, while the net tonnage of Allied shipping was, for the first time, increasing month after month. The sheer, overwhelming number of targets was saturating their ability to attack. The Germans were no longer fighting a navy, they were fighting a spreadsheet. A report to Dönitz in mid-1943 stated it plainly. The enemy's shipbuilding and advances in anti-submarine warfare have dealt the U-boat a setback. The losses have reached an intolerable level. The contempt had turned to alarm. They were losing the tonnage war not to a superior ship, but to a superior factory. But this victorious narrative of ever faster ships, a story told in headlines and newsreels, concealed a crucial truth. The most spectacular records were not the norm, they were performances. In late October 1942, Kaiser's rival yard in Portland, Oregon, stunned the nation by launching a Liberty ship, the SS Joseph N. Teal, in just 10 days. Kaiser, a master of public relations, would not be outdone. The construction of the Robert E. Peary was his answer, a meticulously staged event. The public saw the clock start on November 8th. What they didn't see was that a full 250-ton section of the double bottom, along with numerous other components, had already been assembled and were waiting nearby. This wasn't building a ship from scratch. It was the final, high-speed assembly of a giant pre-built kit. For 4.5 days, under the glare of intense floodlights, the Richmond Shipyard operates in a non-stop 24-hour cycle. It is a perfectly choreographed industrial ballet. Newsreel cameras are everywhere, documenting the spectacle for a global audience. Giant cranes swing massive prefabricated sections into place. Entire deckhouses, bow assemblies. Swarms of welders descend on the seams, their torches lighting up the night, stitching the giant metal puzzle together. The clock is the main antagonist. The pressure is immense. Then, on November 12th, with the cameras rolling, the performance reaches its climax. The SS Robert E. Peary, a complete 10,500-ton hull, slides down the ways and hits the water. The message, broadcast across the globe, was aimed squarely at Berlin and Tokyo. American industry could achieve the impossible on command. But the 4-day record was never the point. It was a demonstration. The true weapon was the system behind it, an industrial machine that, at its peak, was launching an average of 3 Liberty ships every single day. The sustainable build time settled around 42 days, not 4, but a pace that was still unthinkable just years before. This overwhelming, relentless tide of new tonnage is what ultimately broke the U-boat threat. The Allies won the Battle of the Atlantic not by building a better ship, but by building them faster than they could possibly be sunk. The SS Robert E. Peary proved that the ultimate weapon in a global industrial war was not the unsinkable ship, but the endlessly replaceable one.